Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Agile Nova. It's been a while since we started. Hello there. I see some familiar faces joining. Today is our first event in 2026, and I'm really excited to have Brian Tarallo with us. He is a visual facilitator. He is the founder of Lizard Brain, and he does a lot of cool stuff. So, so today we will be talking about accelerating decision making, team decision making. But I think this is not only relevant to software development team or teams in general. I believe it's also relevant to executive leadership teams where they can also find how they are currently making the decisions. So I am happy to have Brian with us today. And Brian, thank you for being here.
Yes, a lot. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. What do you think? Shall we just jump into it?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, cool. Thank you very much for the introduction. I am a meeting facilitator, and if you didn't know that, that's a job. Basically, I get paid to show up at other people's meetings and help them make better decisions. I think that there's a conceit, an assumption in the world where you say, okay, well, these people are smart enough, we should be able to put them into the room, and they just come up with the best answer. The truth is that you can have a lot of really smart people once they get together start making some really really stupid decisions. And so I think what matters most is the way in which groups make decisions. Arguably, the most important things that groups do is to make decisions, and yet few of them are explicit about how they actually do that. So, what I'd like to talk to you about, Salah, today is really about the different ways that groups make decisions and what we can do to kind of ease that process. The word facilitation comes from facile, the idea of easing one's way and making it easier. So, how does that sound? Should we start there?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, cool. Let me give you something to think about. And hi, Sheila. Nice that
Hello.
you could make it. Um, so there's a social scientist out there by the name of William Dyer. Okay, and he has the idea that there are really two worlds that exist. One of those worlds we might call the task world. Let me label it as such, task. Okay. And the task world is one of, this is like the thing that we actually have to do, right? It's our position description, it's our objective in the meeting, it's the challenge we're hoping to overcome. It's why we're there, right? It's whatever's in your inbox or your job jar or your to-do list. There's also the human world, okay? And the human world is one of interpersonal connection. It's one of communication. It's
Hmm.
one where trust is built. It's where we get to know each other at a human level. Okay. And you need to have both. And depending on what culture you're in, you're going to have different proportions of either. One way that I like to think of it is that it's sort of like two wheels of a bicycle, where the rear wheel of the bicycle is the task world and the front wheel is the human world. Okay. So I've got a question for you. What does the rear wheel of a bicycle do? What's its job on the bike?
It's usually help the bike go forward. Is
Yep. It's about forward momentum. It's about, motion. It's about that, we're going to push.
Mhm.
Um, what about the front wheel? This is a tougher one.
I guess if I think about the front wheel, it's is for direction, maybe
Yep. Mhm.
navigation.
So it's direction and navigation. The other thing is, have you ever, if you can imagine trying to ride a bike where the front wheel is locked and you can't move it, how long are you going to be able to ride that bike?
Probably not long, just
Yeah.
maybe a couple of seconds before
Yeah,
I
because the
fall
front
over.
wheels is also about balance, right?
Mm.
That's how we adjust for kind of like the little things, the imperfections in the trail and the path. We need the front wheel for balance, and that's the role of the human world too. Okay, so I got another question for you. Have you ever been in an organization that kind of looked like this, where it
Mm.
was all rear wheel and no front wheel?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so
that looks familiar.
what what is that condition like when you're in an organization like this?
There's a lot of work, but there's no sense of direction or balance.
hmm Yeah, and
Um,
people tend to get treated like cogs in a machine.
mhm,
There's very little interpersonal stuff. It's like you show up, you do the minimum, you do the 9 to 5, and then you go home, right?
mhm, mhm.
Now you don't see this very often, but there's also these kinds of organizations, okay, where it's all about the human, but they don't get a whole lot of stuff done, right? It looks like
Mhm.
one of those old-timey bicycles.
Yeah.
There's a few of those that are out there. Some of the more, I would say, therapeutic organizations tend to
Yeah.
be like that, where their job as associations is really to provide like safe harbor
Mm,
for their members, right? It's not so much about like, we're gonna do some strategic planning. It's really about, okay, this is a place, a safe space where you can come in. They don't get a lot done, but
mm,
it feels good when you're there. The point is I think you have to have the right balance between the human world and the task world. Okay. I see a lot of teams that will come into the room and they'll say something like this. They say, okay, everybody knows everybody. We all know why we're here. Let's just get to work. Right. So I'm just going to ask you,
yes.
what's the problem with that? All right, everybody knows everybody. Let's just get to work.
Yeah.
What's the challenge with that?
Um, yeah, there is a lot of assumptions about what we're here for. I mean,
Mhm.
that's for one, and there's no connection. Like nobody knows who's doing what or who's there, who are the people involved. So the connection is missing. We just
Right.
jump straight to the task and get to work.
Well, what's wrong with that? I mean, that's efficient, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
spending time getting to know each other. I mean, all this lovey-dovey covey stuff, that's
Right.
really inefficient. I mean, if we were being our most efficient selves, we could just jump into it, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's what it looks like, but usually it sort of slows things down in my experience.
Yeah, the
I
whole idea of
see.
like
Yeah,
fast is slow and slow is fast. Okay.
right. Yeah.
I noticed Sheila, you have your hand up. Would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, it would. Um, it may be the same people in the room, but you don't know if they're all thinking that they have the same agenda or the same goal,
Mm,
Totally. Totally.
and they're going to be working on their own priorities, which may be at loggerheads with each other.
Yep.
mm,
Yeah,
So,
you
yeah.
you may have people come into the room under completely, the wrong idea as to why there actually are. Even if you do the best job in the world of saying, okay, here's why we're meeting, the mental model that people create from themselves may be totally different than whatever you intended, right?
Mm,
Okay, so let's zoom way out. Let's start with the basics. Okay, we're going to go back to Peter Senge and his book, The Fifth Discipline. I think that this is a fundamental book. If you have anything to do with management, group dynamics, facilitation, decision making, I highly recommend The Fifth Discipline. It's an oldie but a goodie.
mm.
Um, so
I like
I'm
anything
gonna
with
I'm
Peter saying,
sorry.
yeah. I like
Yeah, anything with
most
Senge.
books with Peter saying, yeah.
So he's got an idea that I'm gonna hijack very lightly, okay? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take his decision-making matrix and I'm gonna turn it into the process of meetings, okay? So I think that there are, and he would agree that there are basically four different kinds of meetings. There is a tell, and the purpose of a tell is to inform or direct. Okay, so you're coming into this meeting. I'm giving you my PowerPoint. I'm blasting you with information. I'm going to learn you some smarts. By the end of the day, when you walk out of this, you will be informed, you will be directed. Now, Sala, this sounds a little frontal, right? And a
Mm,
little bit dictatorial, but we actually need meetings like this. Okay, let's say that I'm coming to you and you're teaching me, I don't know, CPR, right? The last thing that I want you to do is be like, well, Brian, how many chest compressions do you think you have to do? It's like, no, no, tell me the answer, right? We're not going to get there by consensus. I want you to tell me what the correct thing is. So we need tell kind of meetings. Again, the purpose of which are to inform or direct. Then there are those kinds of meetings which we might call a sell. The purpose of a sell is to motivate or persuade. Now, you see this a lot in kind of non-hierarchical organizations. You see this a lot in matrixed organizations. You see this a lot where you've got peers that have to work with each other. Okay.
mm,
So maybe I'm the director of this branch, you're the director of that branch. I can't tell you to do anything, but I can try to win you over to my way of doing things because the grass is greener. I'm dialed into your favorite radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me, right? And you should come and do things this way because it's better and we have cookies, right? So the purpose of a sell is to motivate and persuade. Okay. The next kind is what we might call a consult. And the purpose of a consult is to get advice and feedback. Now, I live in DC or close to it, same as you do. I spend a lot of time in government meetings. This is the kind of meeting that I see most often. It is where the leader comes in. They say, okay, I've got this idea, I've got this bright idea. Here's the thing that I want to do. But I'm at the 60,000 foot level. What am I missing at the 10,000 foot level or the 1,000 foot level or on the ground floor? Give me your advice and feedback. Show me the gaps, right? What am I missing here? I'm still going to decide because I'm the boss, right? I'm the leader, but
Mhm.
I do want your advice and feedback. And again, there's nothing wrong with this as an explicit decision making modality, right? As long as you are explicit about it. And we'll talk about how that goes off the rails in a minute. So that's a consult. It's to provide advice and feedback. Ultimately, though, leader decides, and that's what's important about this one. And then the last one we might call a co-create. And the idea with a co-create is that we all have an equal seat at the table. We have an equal voice. And as equals, we were responsible really for, well, for three things. The first thing is to come up with the ideas. The second is to rack and stack those ideas, to judge those ideas. And then the third is to actually carry out those ideas. So ideation, refinement, execution, divergence, refinement, and then convergence, opening, refining, closing, however you call it. But it's the idea of we're going to bring all the ideas into the room, we're going to stack them up against each other, and then we're going to close and decide exactly what we're going to do. And that's co-creation. Now, here's the thing. I share this with a lot of my clients. And usually when I share this model, what kind of meeting do they want it to be? Salah, you can guess. Which one do they say, ooh, we want to do this? Which one do you think it
Probably
is?
the co-create they want to
Probably the
have.
co-create,
Yeah.
yeah. And so when they say that, I like to say, okay, sir, ma'am, got you. Fair. What happens if the group comes up with an idea that you don't like, right? And they tend to do this. They go, they have this like really, they kind of like, kind of lean back in their chair a little
Yeah,
bit
I
and they
didn't
have
think
this
of that.
withdrawn body language and they're like, ooh, I don't know, right? And then I might then just snap to a tell. I say, okay, thank you very much for telling me that.
Mm.
If you bring people in under the auspices and the expectations of a co-create and you say, but we're going to do this, that is the fastest way you can erode trust in an organization. So
Mhm.
if that's your intent, by all means, go ahead and do that. Get their ideas, get their feedback, get their commitment, and then go and do something else and see how that works out for you. Rather than doing that, just call it what it is, which is a consult. We are going to bring in your ideas, but ultimately I am going to make the decision. And the nice thing about that is that convergent process, which is to say, that process by which we take all of the ideas and we actually judge them for their worth, can be a bit of a grind.
Mm.
And so when you call it a consult, you actually spare people the need to make decisions because ultimately the boss is going to decide anyway. So why drag a whole bunch of people through a decision-making process if the boss is just going to decide anyway? This is the question that I ask 100% of my clients that bring me in to do facilitation. I say, what kind of meeting this is, right? Most of the time, they land somewhere between a consult and a co-create. Regardless, I think the most important thing that teams can do first is to make decisions. Second, it's to be explicit about how they're going to make that decision. We're going to hear all the ideas and then we're going to vote. Or we're going to
Yeah.
hear all the ideas and Bob is going to decide because he's in charge. Or we're going to skip all the ideas and Bob is just going to decide. However they do it, it's fine. They just have to be explicit about it. So, Salah, does that kind
Yeah.
of make sense?
Yeah, no, I see. I mean, many applications for this, but yeah, obviously the main one or the context we're using this in is the decision making or in meetings.
Right.
But there's also finding out, it increases awareness to leaders in general. Where do you make, your most decisions? What's your decisions making style
Hmm.
on this continuum or spectrum here?
Yeah.
Um, so that could be another way, like when you ask the client and where do you want this decision to fall, it's like co-create. Everyone wants everyone to be involved. They want everyone to chime in with their ideas and engage. But then in reality, when things get, muddy or confusing, there's a tendency to just, decide for everyone,
Right.
which again could work, but as long as the person is aware that this is
Yep.
what they're doing, and everyone is also aware that this is how we're going to make decisions.
Exactly. You have to be explicit about it. That's the most important point. If you're not explicit about it, you fall back into sort of that meeting limbo, which I'll talk about in a second, which is how most meetings go.
Hmm.
Um, Rather than saying, okay, here's the process, here's the structure by which we're going to do this. Otherwise, we're defaulting back to, well, we're just going to talk about it, and then magically there's going to be some decision that happens, which
Hmm.
rarely is the case.
I
There are a
think,
couple of,
yeah.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to bring a point that you said earlier about efficiency. A
Mhm.
lot of times meetings can become very
Yep,
confusing. People are not making progress, or at least there's a perception that progress is not being made. And then, the leader or the boss saying, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. And then, that's, how the decision is made so that we can see some sort of progress. We made a decision. Let's now move on. But then
exactly.
they it backfires in my experience in some ways. I'm sure you've seen that too.
Totally, all the time, all the time. And again, it just comes from bad assumptions, I think. Um, Let me add a couple of dimensions to this because there's this nice curve, to this model. Along the horizontal axis, we might consider this to be time, okay, which is to say the time it takes in order to create this decision. A tell is very fast. We're doing this, okay? Kids, no discussion, get in the car, we're going. Come on, let's move, right? This is not open for debate. The other axis is one of buy-in. And so you could read that as engagement, the extent to which people are actually bought into this thing. Now, if buy-in is really, really important, then hopefully you're going to be willing to, invest the time that it takes to do that. By the way, oftentimes I'll get people to say, well, we don't have a whole lot of time, but we need a lot of buy-in. It's like, okay, great, you get to pick one. I can't hack this model.
Hmm.
Now, having said that, a way that you can shorten the time a little bit is to instill a few repeating and recurring practices with your team. In other words, if the team always knows how they make decisions, we're going to hear from everybody for 10 minutes and then we're going to do a 2-minute vote. We're going to do a five-finger vote. We can talk about what that is. I'm sure your Agile folks will know that one, right?
Hmm.
But we're going to do a five-finger vote. If they know that that's the process that they're always going to use to do these co-creative decisions, this can happen a lot faster. But that's where we talk about moving from a team that's just a good working group to a really high-performing team. Okay.
Hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about how you can kind of compress this, how you can really get to accelerated decision making. Okay. Let's take a look at the way that co-creation happens. Let's take a look at most decision-making processes. So I think that teams are actually pretty good at defining the problem. Okay, they're pretty good at getting into the room and saying, okay, here's our objective, here's our outcome. Now, that's an assumption that you have to double check with the people that are in the room. And I think it's always a good idea to have people state the outcome themselves, even after you've already told them what it is. So you could say, hey, we're here to come up with a strategic plan. Now, let's do a quick go around where we hear from everybody in the room to say, and Salah, what would you like to get out of this meeting? Sheila, what would you like to get out of this meeting? Larry, Mo, Curly, what would you like to get out of this meeting? And you hear it individually for them. And when you're doing that, you're affirming two things. First of all, you're making sure that their outcome is in sync with the group outcome, right? That they're not here for a completely different purpose. And second, you are building their own individual investment, right? From at least an individual perspective, they're stating what they want to get out of that meeting. So I think it is a really good idea at the very start of a meeting to do a quick round of introductions, even if everybody already knows everybody, to say, what would you like to get out of this personally? That vests them in the process. They're a part of it. Okay. All right. I think teams are pretty good at defining the objective, right? But here's what happens afterward. Okay. Is that we diverge. We say, well, what if we did this? 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 Okay. And we call this brainstorming, by the way.
Hmm.
Okay. So Lal, let's say that you and I are trying to decide where we go to lunch. Hey, let's go to Taco Bell. Let's go to Chipotle. Let's go to KFC. Let's go to Jollibee's, right? That's brainstorming. That's bringing all the ideas out. Okay. Now, here's what can happen without process and without structure, without that explicit, here's how we're going to make this decision. What can happen is that the leader will listen as people debate, they share pros and cons, they go back and forth, they tear down each other's ideas, sometimes they add to each other's ideas. They say things like, well, that won't work, here's what we tried last time. And they tend to focus on really just the first couple of ideas that come out, right?
Mhm.
It tends not to get much further than that. And, next time you're in a meeting that's totally unstructured, just watch what happens, right? Sometimes somebody will put a challenge out there. They'll say, here's the thing that we're trying to fix. You might get three or four ideas that the group just then swirls around and they go back and forth. Okay. That's what I think of as like meeting limbo, where it just becomes an open discussion without any sort of format, right? And a lot of people just sort of like throw stuff out there. Um, Sometimes what happens in a scenario like that is that the leader will say, okay, I've heard all these ideas and this is what we're going to be doing. They pick one.
Mhm.
Okay. That's a lot. What's the problem with that? What happens to these other people who are out there in the wings that were jamming on ideas? Wait a minute, you want to go to Taco Bell? We were just talking about Chipotle.
Yeah,
Yeah. So what does that
true.
do to people who were just in this divergent mode?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they stop chiming in or they become disengaged. They stop giving ideas.
Right. Yeah. It alienates them. They're like, wait a minute, you just asked me for my ideas, and now all of a sudden you're saying we're going to Taco Bell. That's a terror. I don't agree to that. I'm still on the Chipotle wagon. Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes the leader will snap to a decision without being explicit about this is how we're going to do this. Again, if the leader says, I'm going to hear these ideas and then I decide, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you snap to it without telling people that that's explicitly how you do it, you alienate these folks that are out in the wings. Now, functionally, I only see that happen maybe about 10 to 20% of the time. What I really see happen is more like this, where groups
Mhm.
get into a room, they start
Yeah.
talking, and they just keep talking and keep talking and keep talking and keep talking until time runs out, and people like leave, and they're saying, "Wait a minute, what did we just did we solve anything? What did we
Yeah.
just agree to?" Maybe you've seen stuff like that. It's
Right.
a lot. I don't know. All
Yep.
right. Okay. So there has to be a turn. There has to be a convergent function. You have to go from the brainstorming and the opening to closing. You have to say, all right, well, we're definitely not doing this. We might do this. These ideas are all a part of the same thing, so we're going to put them in the same group until eventually we come up with some sort of outcome. So we go from our challenge to our solution, from our problem to our answer, right? From our objective to our execution. Here's how we're actually going to do this thing. And so in order to do this turn in the middle, when we go from that divergence to that convergence, there's got to be some sort of a refining function. We have to apply some criteria. We would say, all right, here's all of our ideas. Do we have enough time? Do we have enough money? Do we have enough resources? Does this fit with our mission? Do our customers and stakeholders actually want this thing? Is it valuable to them? Does it not already exist somewhere else in the marketplace? Do we have standard operating procedures to be able to do this? Do we have the talent or can we get it to be able to do this thing?
Mhm.
So we'd come up with our decision criteria and then apply it, and then that's how we would get to this ultimate answer. So it's an opening, a refining, and then a closing that's got to happen. And I think that this is a model for how good decision making happens in that co-creative model. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, before I nerd out even harder on this one, Salah, what's coming up for you when you see this thing?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like the most the most the challenges that I've seen were in stuck in the divergence. We have like a lot of things that we want to talk about, and then continue to talk about them, and then continue to talk about them some more.
Yeah.
But there's no action. So yeah, I think they're having sort of the criteria, a vision, outcome, some anchor that will help us move forward, and not just to continue to run in circles.
Right. I experimentally, I just ran this with a group that I was teaching. And I gave four different groups inside the same workshop, the same challenge. And I said, okay, and I explained this to him, and I said, now knowing this, before you do anything else, I want you to get clear on how you're going to make this decision. Okay? I don't care how you do it. You could vote, you could do a straw poll, you could throw a dart. I don't care. But I want you first, before you get into the soup of this,
Mm.
be clear on how you're actually going to make the decision. Okay?
Yeah.
Of the four groups that I asked to do that, do you know how many actually came up with the decision-making process before they started the discussion? Zero.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Kind of
none.
expected.
They just got like, it was like a black hole that just sucked it because they couldn't wait
Yeah.
to jump into the soup, right? And to have the discussion, right? It's
Yeah.
really, really hard to say, wait, before we do that, we're going to hold the aperture open a little bit more before we
Yeah.
snap to our way that we typically do things
Yeah.
and actually get explicit about how we do that. Now, let's talk about why that is, okay? This is a good model for how decisions get made. It turns out this is also a model for human beings, and I'll explain what I mean, okay?
Mm.
So there are those people out there that we might consider to be openers.
Mm.
These are people who love to jam on ideas. They say, "Well, what if we did this? What if we did this? What if we did this? Give me the whiteboard and I will draw the new idea," right? I'm kind of one of those people myself, unless you can't tell, right? So they're like big picture people. What if we did this? You know, theirs is like the art of the possible.
Mm.
And then there are people that we might consider to be refiners, okay? These are people that like to ask really, really tough questions. Well, what happened last time we tried this? You know, what are our policies say about this? Is this legal, right? Is this going to make us any money? What's
Mm.
the point of this? You know, what are we trying to achieve here? Those are all good refining questions, and we need that.
Mm.
And then there are people that we might consider to be closers, okay? These are folks who like to say things like, I don't want to be a part of the sausage making.
Mm.
I don't want to be in the kitchen. I don't want to be in the soup with all of this stuff. Just tell me the thing to do, and I will go and figure out how to do it. Tell me
Mm.
the hill, I will figure out how to take it. Give me the box, I will check it off. Give
Mm.
me the thing on my to-do list, I will scratch it off. Whatever it takes, I will do it, but I don't want to be a part of all this stuff. Okay? Now, having said that, I think a good decision-making process has a time and a space for all of these kinds of people, right? So maybe at the very beginning, we do some moves where we bring ideas into the room, and then we do some moves where we have people refine those ideas, and then we have people that say, all right, now how are we going to execute on this stuff? What does the action plan look like, right? How does this show up on the calendar? And we engage these people here. So what I want to talk about now are some specific activities that you can do in each one of these phases that facilitate the process. Before I do that, I just want to check in with you. Do you have any questions, comments, queries, posers, anything coming up for you that you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good distinction because most of the conflict that I see happen in meetings are because, people are sort of like, it's almost like a tug of war. People are pulling toward the solution. That's the type of people that you mentioned, the
Yep.
closers. People are, pulling towards we have more ideas that we need to explore.
Right.
And then maybe the third group that you mentioned pulling towards like, all these questions, like throwing like, a lot of wrenches into the process. So having this structure, here's the structure of how we're gonna run the facilitation or the meetings.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
some people they can't wait to like it seems like again like back to that word efficiency.
Hmm.
They want to jump in too quickly to solutioning and
They do.
closing,
Yeah.
and some people just want to continue to brainstorm, which makes it hard to close or land on some decisions to move forward.
All right. I
So,
love that, Salah, because one of the things that I try to live by is if you're afraid of some dynamic happening in the room, if you
mm,
are afraid of, say, people jumping into solution too quickly, name it to tame it. And what
mm,
that means is that you make that dynamic explicit. You call it out. And a good way to call that particular one out is to talk about openers, refiners, and closers. And you do it exactly like this. There are people who prefer brainstorming. There are people who prefer asking really tough questions. There are people who just prefer to execute. And when I say that in the room, I invite people to say, okay, openers, raise your hands. And all their
mm,
hands go up, right? Refiners, raise your hands. And all their hands go up. Closers, raise your hands. And all their hands go up. And I say, it's great that you're in this room because we're going to need all of you.
mm,
And let me paint a picture for you. Let's say we're supposed to go until 5 o'clock today. Let's say it's 4:59 and we're putting the finishing touches on that action plan, and we're 30 seconds away from leaving, let me just say this, openers, that is not the time to come up with a bright new shiny idea. We have already done the work. And let me also say it this way. Let's say that we're getting started at 8 o'clock. At 8:01, refiners, this is not the time to start saying, well, what happened last time we tried this and why won't that work? Let's be on the opening side of things. In other words, there's going to be a time and place for all of you to shine throughout this process.
Hmm.
I will tell you when that is, right? But the rest of the time, you might get a little itchy. The rest of the time, you might have to go against your nature just a little bit, but there is going to be a time for you to shine. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
All right, cool.
yeah.
Let's talk about how to do this then. Okay. So let's talk about the front half of that diamond. Let's talk about opening. Let's talk about divergence. Okay. Um, since it's just us chickens here, Salah, what's your preferred method to bring ideas into the room? How do you like to be generative? How do you like people to actually create stuff?
Um, I use brainstorming, but I use
That's
brainwriting
it.
more, actually brainwriting, because it gives
Ah,
sort of an equal footing to everybody to chime in,
okay. So we've
introverse,
got
extroverse.
brainstorming. Okay. And then I heard you say brain writing. Okay. All right, let's talk about both of these for a second. So, brainstorming developed by Alex Osborne. Okay. So he had four rules for brainstorming. First of all, it's the be freewheeling. The more wild the idea, the better. Build on the ideas of others. Go for quantity, and then did I say the more wild the idea, the better? Oh yeah, withhold judgment is the last
Mm,
one. Okay. Now, here's the thing about brainstorming. Brainstorming uh, is that's how you do this. And having said that, it is really, really easy to get sucked into that meeting limbo where
mm,
after the first or second or third idea pops up in the room, somebody says, well, here's why that won't work. And you end up vectoring the conversation. Let me explain exactly what I mean by that. Okay. Because this is going to come in later. And this is why you like brain writing. All right.
mm,
So let's go back to the idea of like where might we go to lunch? Okay, where might we go to lunch? Taco Bell, Chipotle, KFC. Okay. Well, what that does is that it takes that initial problem statement and it iterates, but in the same general direction. There are some baked in assumptions on those three answers, right? Taco Bell, Chipotle, KFC. It's fast food. It's a sit down restaurant, right? And so those assumptions are unconsciously built into the conversation from the very beginning. And why was that? It's because of the bias that you get when you first hear those couple of ideas, right? It's called availability bias, right? These
mm,
are the ideas that are right in front of me, therefore they're the ones that are most important. And so any of the ideas going forward may have those same assumptions built into it. It's going to be fast food, it's going to be a sit down restaurant, it's going to be a chain restaurant too, okay? What this precludes from us doing is, pursuing the possibilities of saying, well, what if Salah was to cook for us? I hear you're a pretty decent chef, right? Or what if, we were to order in? Or what if we were to go to Sheila's house and raid her pantry, right? Any of those might be a good idea. But because we've vectored the conversation by hearing those first couple of ideas, it tends to give us a direction for everything else. What we want those brainstorm ideas to do is to do this is to be as divergent as possible. Okay, so let's go back to brainstorming for a second. Um, I would say have people write them down. Okay, so have these ideas written down, even if you're brainstorming. That way, you don't run the risk of vectoring the conversation, of unfairly influencing other people's ideas that happen to hear it later. All right, now you mentioned brain writing, which is another way to do the same thing. Can you tell me what brain writing is? Because it's a good one.
yeah, usually I have people write down what they think, give them like a time frame to write down their ideas,
Hmm.
and then we share it. I mean, put it all on the board or virtual board at the same time. That way, it's not influenced by the kind of the round robin that happens with the
Nice.
brainstorming. So in the physical space, we'd be using post-it notes, and everybody would be putting the ideas up. In a virtual space, we do the same thing with Miro or Mural or some other electronic
Hmm.
board. And so that's kind of the gist of it.
Yep. Okay, so we're saying basically the same thing. I'm saying do a written brainstorming. You saying do brain writing, and that's the same thing. We're the way we're
Yeah.
defining it.
The
I've Go ahead.
yeah, the only I guess nuance, I don't know if like when they write it and then say it versus, just to write it and then everybody's posting it at once. So it's sort of
Hmm.
like the crowdsourcing aspect of it rather than just going around
Yeah.
with the brainstorming.
So I like, to be honest with you, when you post things, not everybody always reads it, right? They
Mm.
tend to have a little bit of ownership bias over the things that they themselves wrote. It's sort of that idea of like, when you see a group photo, who's the first person you look for? It's yourself,
Yourself,
right?
right?
So, you can have people take a bunch of ideas and put them on a board, but you have to almost have a forcing function that gets them to read other people's ideas, okay? You can do that with a gallery walk. You can do that. Another way I've seen brain writing work, so check this out, is that you have people write down their idea. Maybe it's on an index card, and you say, okay, go ahead and pass it to the left, and everybody passes it to the left. Read
Mm,
that card. Okay, now pass it to the left. Again, now you're forcing them to actually go through the rigor of reading and forming a mental model of each of those ideas.
mm,
Here's a couple of other ways that you can do the same thing. So one thing that I learned from the Army, not in the Army, but from the Army, U.S. Army does this thing called, whoops, it's called think, write, share. And it's basically
mm,
the same thing that you just said, Salah, except we're going to give you 60 seconds to do nothing but thinking about whatever, the answer to this problem statement is. It's like quiet, you do a timer, no writing, no talking, extroverts, pack it in, okay?
mhm.
All you get to do is to think about it. And then 60 seconds to write it down, one idea per sticky. I think you could actually buy that t-shirt somewhere, one idea per
Yeah.
sticky, okay? And then that's where you do your go around or your round robin, where it's like, okay, we're going to hear from everybody in the room. What were your ideas that you wrote down? So that's called a think, write, share.
Mm,
I would be remiss if I didn't add my absolute favorite to this list, which is mind mapping.
mm,
Okay. And for those of you that don't know, a mind map is it's a fancy way of saying a radial network diagram. Mhm. Where we start with our problem statement and then we branch outward. Okay, so we say, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? Oh, yeah, and if we did this thing, then we could also do this and this. And what I like about mind mapping is that it builds in its own structure as you go. Okay. All right, so there you got four ideas for the
diversions.
opening side of things.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's do another thing. Let's do the other side. So let's talk about the middle. Let's talk about that refining part. Okay, so let's do this together. Um, Without nerding out too much about it, what might be some of the criteria that we could ask people to weigh when we're talking about different decisions that they could make when they're weighing different options?
Mm,
What are some of those refining questions we could ask? Why don't we go
mm.
back and forth on this one? Have you got a good one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of the product world. Usually, desirability. Maybe
Nice.
is it valuable? Is it desirable? Is it feasible? That kind of thing.
Valuable, desirable, feasible. Yep. So valuable is people going to pay money for this thing? Desirable, do they actually want it? Feasible, can we do this? Yeah, all
Hmm.
good questions. You could ask questions like, have we done this before? Right? What happened when we've done this before? And again, do we have enough going into the feasibility side? Do we have the time, talents, resources in order to be able to do that? Yep. Um, all of this is about criteria-based decision making. Okay. This is a bit of a grind to do
Hmm.
criteria-based decision making because you have to name each one of these things. And let me just say that the juice may not be worth the squeeze to do criteria-based decision making. So if you don't want, and here's the other thing, you might name 20 different criteria and you'll still miss stuff. Okay.
Hmm.
There still might be some implicit reasons to go with an option or not go with an option that you don't know. Let's say that you and I are going back and forth between like, do we want to go to Taco Bell or Chipotle? Right? And we list, well, let's think about price, let's think about convenience, let's think about tastiness. We could name all the criteria, but then we might get there and realize, wait a minute, this thing has got like an F from the health department, and we didn't even think to put that on our list. Okay.
Mm,
So here's another way that you can do decision making by skipping all the criteria. And I know that sounds a little bit wild, but we can do preferential decision making. In other words, preference based. And that's a fancy way of saying voting.
Mm.
Okay? Because what you're doing is you're taking all of the work of defining these criteria and you're putting it into the black box of people's minds, right? It's really the limbic system that gets to work here and saying, well, all right, given just everything that I know about this thing, what's my preference? So that's where we get to voting. All right, so let's do some of our favorite voting methods. Of course, there's what's called a straw poll. Okay.
Mm.
All right, we're going to do a non-binding straw poll. I just want to see where the energy is. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you're in favor of this idea, a thumbs down if you're not. Okay. So a lot likes that idea, so you can have a thumbs up. That's a straw poll. That's about the easiest one that you get. I just want to see where the energy is, non-binding. Where do you stand on this one? Another way you can do it is you can do what's called a gladiator poll. This one's a little bit different. So thumbs up if you agree or you like it. Thumbs down if you disagree or you dislike it. Thumb
Mm.
sideways. Oh, what's thumb sideways for? Do you know this one? What's thumb sideways for?
Yeah, it's so like,
You
maybe
could do it that way. I
yeah.
also like to say thumb sideways if we need to discuss this a little bit more.
Mm.
Okay. We need to have a little bit more discussion about this. Now, if somebody does give you the sideways thumb, you say, okay, what specifically do you need to hear so that you can either be for or against? Not we're going to open it up to conversation again, because hopefully at this point we've already done
Mm.
that. All right, so we've done straw polls, we've done gladiator polls. Shall we do fist of five? I feel like we should do fist of five. This is, after all, an
Yeah.
agile community, right? You got us
Just
facilitators borrowed fist of five from you guys.
I think we all borrowed it from the facilitation folks.
Nah, I'm pretty sure you guys had it first. But all right, so fist of five. So we're gonna do like degree to which you actually support this idea.
Mm.
Shall we go to Taco Bell in order to have our lunch? So a five is yes, this is the best idea since sliced bread. Love this idea, wholehearted endorsement. One is it's a terrible idea. I'm not on board. Don't count me in. And I would demonstrate which finger you want people to rise to lift. Otherwise, they will show you the wrong finger, and you don't want that to happen. Okay.
Yes.
And then you just do a very, very quick count. Now, let me show you something. I don't get paid for this. This is just something that makes my life a lot easier. So this is a little app that's called, hang on. It's called Count That Now. Okay.
Mm.
It's called Count That Now. And it basically turns your phone into a little like clicker, like they've got at amusement parks,
Mm.
where you, as you're going through it, you can say, all right, like somebody's got like three fingers up. So you say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, right? And so if you've got 30 people in the room, this makes your life a whole lot easier.
Mm.
It's a free app. It's called Count That Now. And it's just a way that you can go like tick, 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 if you're doing that fist of five thing. Okay.
Mm.
All right. Of course, we would be remiss if we didn't include, usually I have them here, I guess I don't, dot
Dot
votes.
voting. Yeah.
Dot voting, okay? So again, the idea with dot voting is that you give everybody a sheet of sticker dots, right? And you say, okay, against these options that you've got, go ahead and place your dots. So if you really want to go to Taco Bell, you can put all five of your dots on Taco Bell. If you're kind of split, well, okay, maybe three of your dots go to Taco Bell and two of your dots go to Chipotle. But what this does is that it amplifies the energy that's in the room. Okay.
Mm.
The problem with one person, one vote is that it tends to downplay the degree to which people actually care about this stuff. And so there may be one person in the room that's got some sort of inside information, they've got some experience that other people don't have, they have a
Mm.
level of expertise, or it's really going to affect them in an outsized way. They may really want this vote to go in one way or another. Okay. If you're not doing a dot vote, their vote counts the same as somebody who just doesn't even really care. Okay. So what dot voting does is it allows people to follow their energy. Okay. I could say a lot
Yeah.
more about this, but
Yeah.
I'm also keeping an eye
Yeah.
on time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the method sort of is determined by the maybe the decision weight.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, for in the case of like, where we gonna go for lunch, don't dot voting maybe like easy and fast. But
Hmm.
like you said, if it's like a high stake situation, a decision, some people, don't really care about the thing. Just get me out of here. Let me put my
Yeah.
notebooks
Yeah.
and then go for lunch. Yeah, that's not the right method.
Yeah. And again, this is one of these moves here. Whatever you're choosing for your refining method, right? That's something to decide before you ever start discussing this thing. If you don't do that, you end up discussing, and that's all you do. You just discuss, and then
Mhm.
time runs out. You found yourself in meeting limbo. Like, what did we actually decide? So have this explicitly stated right after you say, here's the objective. So here's why we're here. We're going to decide where we're going to go and have lunch, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to do a dot vote. Okay. All right, let's talk about the other half of the diamond, which is that closing part. Now that we've applied our decision-making criteria, now that we've voted, we have to figure out what are we going to go off and do. So I'm just going to do the easy one, okay? And that is an action list. So you grab a flip chart, you grab whatever it is you're using in Teams or Miro or Mural or whatever it is, but you're writing down the actions. So Salah, help me out with this. What would you say are the good pieces, parts, and components of an action list? What should it have?
It should be something specific. I mean, what is really, it should have sort of some owner or some person who's going to be
Yep.
following up, maybe, and then the date,
Yep.
so that we can know when is it going to take place.
hmm Yep. At a basic, who, what, when, right? You can make it more exquisite than that if you want to, but I'm a big fan of let's track the minimum amount of information that we need. Any more than that, it just gets to be an administrative headache. But at a
Hmm.
minimum, it's who, what, and when. Exactly. Another thing that you can do, and I really like to do this one, is to just print up a giant calendar, like a real calendar of maybe the next couple of months. Because it's one thing to have an action list in isolation. It's
Mm.
another thing when you realize, oh, there's a federal holiday coming up, right? And then there's performance reviews here. And Salah is going to be out on leave here, right? It's when you actually plot this stuff out against reality, then you can actually, it's much more likely that it gets done.
Mhm.
Action lists tend to live in isolation, right?
Yeah.
A calendar looks at the reality of the other work that you've got to do. Okay. There's one more closing method that I want to drop in, and let me go ahead and grab it. Give me just a second. One more closing method that I would be remiss if I didn't drop it in, just because if it hasn't been explicit at this point, I am what's called a graphic facilitator, which means I like
Mm.
to use visuals to do these things. And this, of course, is what's called the graphic game plan. So you can get this from the Grove Consultants. Okay. Fair disclosure, I don't get paid by them, but I do teach for them on their behalf every now and then. Here's what the graphic game plan is. You start with your project, whatever it is, right here. You say, okay, this is the goal, this is the task, this is the objective, this is the what we want to do. Then you break it down into chunkable parts. This is project planning 101. This is phases. This is your Gantt chart. This is your critical path. This is your work breakdown structure, whatever you want to call it. That goes right here. And then below here, you name the resources that you have available to you. So what do we actually have in order to be able to pull this off? You name your challenges, your dependencies, the things that are outside of your control down here. And then around the outside, that's where you would label your benefits. Here's what we're going to recognize and achieve if we're
Mm.
successful in achieving our goal. I really, really like this one. This is sort of like a project plan on a single sheet of paper. Again, it's called the graphic game plan. I mean, I do these things for summer vacations, right? It's just a good tool. All right,
That's
so Salah, that's what I had to share with you
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Did you dig
Awesome.
it? How did it go?
Yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. It's I love the visual facilitation because again, like, people a lot of times sometimes meetings are happening in the traditional sense where people just around the table, sort of popcorn style ideas, but there is no visual to show what's actually going on.
hmm
Our brain doesn't really process things when they are in our heads. They
Right.
have to get out of our heads so that we can able to talk about them and converge, refine, diverge as you just walked us through this.
Totally. This is, if I could do a quick plug, this is who we are. This is what we're all about. So this is about, visual meetings. And really it's about having people make better decisions when you make their ideas concrete and visible. It's a lot easier to talk about the jetpack when you can actually see the jetpack. It's a lot easier to weigh the pros and cons of AI when you can actually see the AI
Yeah.
that's there. So if anybody would like to nerd out on visual facilitation, a couple of resources for that. You can easily find me. My email address is Brian with an I, Brian at lizardbrain.com. And just because, this is Agile Nova, let me also invite you. There's also Nova Scribes, which is another meetup
Mhm.
group that I'm a co-organizer of. We've got some meetups that are generally designed a little bit more for the visual facilitator. So if any of this resonates for you, well, we would love to have you. And you can find us on Meetup. Just search for Nova Scribes.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna mention that you also organize the Nova Scribes meetup, and I highly recommend it. A lot of facilitators that gets invited, and there's a lot of information and knowledge that we can take away from the just share our experience. It's really nice. So so yeah, I appreciate your time, Brian. I think this should be like a part one to maybe a part two, or maybe we do a conversation, podcast style, because again, a lot of questions might come up as I'm thinking through this in the diversion stage. For example, I mean, we didn't really bring up AI into this picture, but
Mm,
a lot of the divergence, AI is going to accelerate the divergence. A lot of ideas, and okay, we could do this, and a lot more ideas, but it's still the decision making has to happen with this sort of structure. Still we need to decide on things together as a group.
totally agree.
So I appreciate your time and wisdom and insights here. And hopefully we can do another one, or maybe we'll see you at the Nova Scribes event,
Yeah,
the upcoming.
you have to pay it forward. Maybe you'll come to my meetup and talk a little bit about Agile. We would love to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And thanks, Sheila, for joining. We appreciate you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, thanks.
All right. Thank you, everyone.